What's up, fellas? What's up? What's up? Let me just pop up all my things, make sure everything's working well. Here we go. Here we go. Man. I always have the same issue where this thing just doesn't open. Let's see if it works now. What's going on, fellas? What's going on, boys? What's going on? What's going on? Let's bring this up. Do that. Do this. There we go. Everything's working. Let me just do I'll just set that quickly. Set that a little bit of a goal. And perfect. All right. What's going on, fellas? Welcome back to the stream. This is part of our essentially daily live streams where we stream every day during the week, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and on weekends we stream on Sunday, as you see now, 2 p.m. Eastern time. So we have a lot of news that came out, or I guess a lot of things to talk about from yesterday. Yeah. So I guess I'll allow a second for people to get in here. But so what happened yesterday? Obviously, UFC Nashville. It was actually like a really good card. I kind of talked about it before. I thought in terms of rankings or in terms of meaning, I didn't think there was too much meaning on that card. But in terms of fun fights, I thought there could be a lot of fun fights, and it did actually turn out that way. So before further ado, let's get right into this. So let's go here. And here we go. Here's the card. Let's start with the prelims and go from there. So the first fight of the prelims actually was pretty good. Actually, we saw a finish in a women's fight, which is pretty cool. Pretty good finish as well. Good combo. The Mike Davis fight, I kind of tuned in a little bit late to this card. I started watching for the Volter Walker fight, but I saw in the Mike Davis fight, he was able to get a TKO in the second round. I fully expected him to win going into the fight. I always thought Mike Davis was pretty good. It just he was super inactive, and in his last fight, he also didn't look really good. But I thought this was a very winnable fight, a fight that Mike Davis really needed to win to continue to fight in the UFC, honestly. And he was able to do so with a second round TKO. This fight, this was something that I did not see coming. Volter Walker has 3 wins in a row. All 3 fights, or all 3 of those wins, have came by heel hook. It is pretty crazy what Volter's able to do with that heel hook. He has different variations for the heel hook that he goes to, and he's been having a lot of success. Going into this fight, I thought Kennedy would win just because I didn't think Kennedy was good, but I also didn't think Volter Walker was that good either. And I just thought on the feet, Kennedy would have such a big advantage. But this was a very quick fight, 54-second fight. Volter was able to get the fight to the clinch. He was able to, go into some sort of I don't even know what you would call that, but some sort of interesting takedown right into the heel hook. He was able to get it quickly, and he was able to find the submission. And after this fight, I mean, as I said going into it, I never thought Kennedy was good, but after this fight's over, it kind of makes me think: is Volter Walker like actually good? He's shown some pretty good techniques. Obviously, his heel hook submission game is pretty good. Usually, heel hooks is not something that's too effective, but Volter was able to get 3 in a row. So I'm definitely interested to see what he can do going forward from there. The next fight, Mora. I mean, I expected Mora to win. It was kind of a boring fight. Murphy had one position in the third round where she almost got a guillotine choke, but she wasn't able to get it. Mora kind of fights the same all the time. She's not really that good, and she always gasses out. But in the end, she was able to get the victory. Here's another one. This is another pick I got wrong for this weekend. Jake Matthews was able to get the victory. Early on, Chidi looked pretty good, I thought. It was a very fast fight, obviously, only 1:09 total. But early on, I thought Chidi looked pretty good, keeping range, utilized very nice body kicks, looked very powerful on the feet. But Jake was able to get a takedown. He was able to get Chidi's back, and he was able to submit him relatively quickly, actually. So very good win for Jake Matthews, and we'll see where he goes from here. Next fight, Chris Curtis versus Max Griffin. This was kind of just a grinded out fight. I kind of talked about this going into the fight. I definitely thought Chris Curtis should win, which he did win. But at the same time, I thought if Max Griffin utilized footwork, it could give some problems to Chris Curtis. And Max did look to utilize a little bit of footwork in this fight, and it actually did give some problems to Chris Curtis. So that's why I think it was a little bit of a closer fight than it probably should have been. Actually turned out to be a split decision, but at the end of the day, Chris Curtis got the victory, and I thought he won the fight like before it happened, and after the fight was over, I also thought he won that fight, and yeah, he was able to get the victory there. This was a fight that I didn't pick correctly, but I'm very happy about it, honestly, because I was talking about in length of how bad I thought Junior Tafa was. He can't stop leg kicks. He doesn't hit hard. He can't stop takedowns. He really can't do much, honestly, at the UFC level. And I didn't think Tuco was good, but in this fight, he was good enough. In the first round, he had some issues, I guess, but in the second round, he was able to find a takedown, and eventually, he was able to find a submission. It just Tafa. He even hurt Tuco a little bit in that first round, I believe, or maybe it was the second round, but he got taken down immediately after. Tafa is just not UFC level, in my opinion. He can't really do much, and I think we kind of saw that in this fight. As I said, it's not that Tuco is good, it's more that Tafa is bad, and that's kind of how the fight played out, in my opinion. Next, we have Vitor Petrino versus Austin Lane. I picked Petrino to win the fight, but I did not predict Petrino to win the fight via submission. So that was interesting. I kind of thought, these guys were going to trade on the feet. Maybe Austin Lane would have some success, but eventually he would get knocked out. But Petrino decided to look for takedowns in this fight. He got it, and he was eventually able to find a submission. So good win for Petrino. We'll see where he goes from here. We were kind of talking about it in one of the live streams leading up to this fight that that Petrino could be a ranked guy at heavyweight, not because Petrino is good, but more so just for his physical tools. And it's kind of shows the state of the heavyweight division. And after this win versus Austin Lane, I mean, I could see it. As I said, I don't think Petrino is very good, but if he is able to, rack up a couple more wins, maybe one or two more wins, he'll probably be ranked, and we'll see where he goes from there. He does hit pretty hard. He's even shown some wrestling ability, some jiu-jitsu ability. He does also have a pretty good chin as well. So we'll see how those physical tools play out at the heavyweight division going forward from here. So we'll see. We'll see what happens for Petrino. Next after that, this one was kind of an unfortunate fight, in my opinion. It was Nate Landwehr versus Morgan Charriere. Early on, Nate was doing great. He was kind of doing exactly what I thought he could going into the fight. Going into the fight, my prediction for this was I thought Nate could get the victory just because Charriere, I don't think had great boxing, and also he tends to gas out a little bit. So I thought if Nate can get on that inside in that boxing range, really start to pick apart Charriere and possibly start to gas him out once we get to the second and once we get to the third rounds, that's really where Nate Landwehr could, get going and possibly find a victory from there. And honestly, in the first two rounds, it was going very well for Nate. The second round, especially. In that second round, Nate really started to push forward, put on the pressure, started to land a bunch of shots, and it just seemed like Charriere didn't really know what to do. I will say, I thought Charriere's boxing looked a lot better in this fight than it did in previous fights, but regardless of that, Nate was still able to have a lot of success. But unfortunately, only 27 seconds into the third round, Charriere was able to land a big shot. He hurt Nate pretty badly, and Nate was very hurt. I thought Nate, obviously it's easier said than done, but I thought Nate should have looked to grab as opposed to just, move around and move his head. But he didn't, and unfortunately for him, he ended up, taking one of those secondary shots or one of those third shots that ended up being the final blow. And I was fine with the stoppage. I heard some people saying that they didn't like the stoppage, but I was fine with the stoppage. It was a legitimate win for Charriere. It was a little unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. The next fight was Steve Garcia versus Calvin Kattar. I thought Steve had a chance to win this fight. Or sorry, not Steve. Calvin had a chance to win this fight. I just thought he may have slicker boxing than Steve Garcia, but it turned out that wasn't true at all. Steve looked really good in this fight. He wasn't able to continue his TKO streak, but still, he looked great in this fight. And I also think Calvin Kattar looks pretty much done at this point. The aggression that we saw earlier on in his career, his ability to find finishes, his ability to, just land shots even, kind of seems like it went all by the wayside. And Calvin really didn't have much success at all. He wasn't too aggressive. Steve Garcia almost finished him one time, I believe, in the third round it was, or maybe it was the second round, but whatever. He almost finished him a few times in this fight. But at the end of the day, Steve Garcia put on a really good performance, showed good cardio, showed a good ability to obviously win fights via finish, but this fight was via decision, and he still showed a lot of good things in this fight. So great win by Steve Garcia. I do think his future is pretty bright, but at the same time, I think Calvin Kattar is pretty close to retirement if he's not there already. He just doesn't show enough aggression at this point in his career, in my opinion. But that's how that fight went. This fight, I was a little bit upset about actually. Wonderboy, but versus Gabriel Bonfim. I thought Wonderboy definitely won the fight. In the first round, Bonfim did good work, obviously. But in the second round, I believe that's really where Wonderboy started to come along, or maybe it was the first round. I don't remember, but there was 2 rounds. I don't remember exactly what rounds, but there was 2 rounds where Wonderboy definitely won. I believe it was the second and the third. At least in my opinion, I thought he definitely won because in the third round, Bonfim did have a lot of control time alongside the cage, going for takedowns. But for the most part, he didn't really do much damage. And I talk about this a lot on my channel, but people talk about, takedowns, how much do they mean? Control time, how much do they mean? According to the judging criteria, it really shouldn't mean anything unless nothing else in terms of damage happens in that round. And in that third round, Wonderboy landed the more damage by far. So I thought Wonderboy should have won that fight. He certainly won round 2, I believe it was, where he landed that head kick and he hurt Gabriel Bonfim. And in round 3, he was also landing the more damaging shots, at least in my opinion. So I thought Wonderboy should have won the fight, but they decided to give it to Gabriel Bonfim via a split decision. Kind of sucks because Wonderboy is, up there in age. He's already 42. But, that's how it is. That's how it goes. They gave it to Bonfim, and that's what it is. But I thought Wonderboy definitely won that fight. Then we have the main event, which I've been getting a lot of comments. It's been great, actually. But I was certainly wrong about this main event. Derrick Lewis versus Talison Teixeira. Going into the fight, I just thought, listen, if you watch back my video or if you watch any of my live streams, I didn't think Talison Teixeira was some amazing athlete or amazing fighter or anything like that. But I did think he could have a lot of success at heavyweight just because of, 3 separate things. I thought he had a good chin. I thought he hits really hard, and his length. I thought based on those 3 things, he would have success. And, he's still young. It's possible he could still have success. But at least in this fight specifically, Derrick Lewis proved that, he hits really hard. I mean, I don't think we really learned much new in this fight going into it. If you watch some of my live streams going into it, I said Derrick Lewis hits ridiculously hard. He can knock out a horse if he lands clean, and he was able to land clean on Talison, and he was able to get the finish only 35 seconds in. A pretty impressive performance for Derrick. And after the fight, I heard a lot of people saying that, just give this guy a title shot, match him up against Derrick Lewis, against Tom Aspinall, which ironically, I don't think Derrick Lewis is that far away from a title shot at this point. But at the same time, I don't think that he should get a title shot like immediately. I think he should get at least one more win before he fights Tom Aspinall. I think Gane's probably going to be next. And if Derrick Lewis can beat, one more guy, maybe you give him a title shot because he's number 9 in the rankings at this point, I believe. Well, let's check. Let's see. So he is number 9 in the rankings right now. He just beat the 13th ranked guy. So maybe he moves up to like 7, maybe something like that. So if he beats one more guy ahead of him in the rankings, then maybe you can give him a title shot versus Tom Aspinall, which is kind of crazy to say considering where Derrick Lewis was just, a few days ago. But big victory here. And also, I think there's a real chance he can get a title shot with one more win, just because when he wins, he wins by finish. And usually when you get those more exciting matchups or exciting finishes and whatever, that's usually where you're able to get pushed by the UFC and able to get title shots. So we'll see what happens. In terms of the stoppage, I saw a lot of people complaining about the stoppage in the main event. I also personally thought it wasn't a good stoppage. He obviously Talison got dropped legitimately. Then he climbed his way back up the cage. Yes, he did cheat. He grabbed onto the cage and utilized it to get back up, which is accurate. But I thought probably how it should have went was, let the fight continue at that point because Derrick Lewis was still trying to find the finish. And obviously, if he found another shot that knocked down Talison again, of course, you could have just stopped the fight at that point. But if if there was a point where Lewis and Teixeira got into the clinch, let's say, or let's say Derek Lewis backed up or Taliesin backed him up and they were kind of at a standstill for a second, I think at that point, Herzog should have stopped the fight and said, okay, we're taking a point away from Taliesin Teixeira for utilizing the cage to get back up. He obviously was cheating. Um, but at the same time, I don't think because he grabbed the cage, that meant the fight should have been stopped. I thought it probably should have kept going. Taliesin did appear to be, still there. I mean, after the fight was called, he was complaining immediately. So, I thought probably the stoppage wasn't great, but at the end of the day, Derek Lewis, he won the fight. Good for him, and he'll probably get, maybe one more win if he's able to get one more win. He'll honestly probably get a title shot, which is pretty crazy to say. And could he beat Tom Aspinall? I mean, probably not. But the thing about Derek Lewis is he has that nuclear option. If he lands one shot, usually it's the right hand. In this fight, it was a left hook. Right hand, left hook doesn't really matter. Whatever he lands, if he can land on you, he's probably going to knock you out. And that's what we saw in the fight against Taliesin. Of course, if he's able to land on Tom Aspinall, we could see him find a finish in that fight as well. He just has that nuclear option, and in my opinion, that's why it's almost. I mean, listen, if he fights Tom Aspinall and somehow beats him, then I guess all this will go out the window. But in my opinion, like a fight like this is a reason for why I'm personally a little bit upset why Derek Lewis maybe didn't work on his game a little bit more because he obviously hits ridiculously hard, and I think he has an ability to wrestle. He just doesn't look to utilize it. I always thought if Derek Lewis really looked to become a wrestler, work on his offensive wrestling, work on his control time on the ground, this guy can be really good because at this point, if he is able to get you down by, knocking you down or even finding a takedown at times, he does have really good ground and pound. Like ridiculously good ground and pound. He's able to finish essentially everybody when he's on top. So I always thought if Derek Lewis worked on his wrestling a little bit more, adding another wrinkle to his game, this guy could legitimately be elite. But he never really did it, and whatever. But even without that, he could certainly get to a title shot probably with one more win. What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. What's going on? What's going on? We're just talking about or recapping that Lewis versus Teixeira card. It was a pretty good card overall. It definitely was a pretty good card. But we'll see. We'll see what happens for Derek Lewis and for Taliesin. I mean, obviously, yeah, he lost to Derek Lewis. But is it going to ruin his career? Maybe. We'll see if he's good or not. We will see. He beat Justin Tafa, who's all right. Lewis versus Waldo. Fuck. Listen, Derek Lewis will beat Waldo. If they put that fight together, he will beat him. And I might as well full screen this at this point, actually. I'll put your comment on the screen. But yeah, so if they do Lewis versus Waldo, I think Lewis will win. And maybe that's the fight he needs to, to get a title shot. But the thing about that is Waldo is already matched up against Sergey Pavlovich. I'm sure Sergey's going to win that fight. I'm super low on Waldo. I don't think he's very good. I think he's only at the point that he's at. Waldo is currently number 6. I think he's only at that point because he hits pretty hard and he's athletic. But in terms of skill, I don't really think he has much skill. And against Sergey Pavlovich, I think Sergey's probably going to beat Waldo. Maybe if Waldo loses to Sergey, maybe you can still do Derek Lewis versus Waldo. And if Derek Lewis knocks out Waldo, which I think he would if they put that fight together, then maybe just give Derek Lewis a title shot. It is kind of crazy to say that, but I think, based on the state of the heavyweight division at this point, there's not really too many guys that are legitimately deserving of title shots compared with the fact that Derek Lewis, when he wins, he knocks everybody out. You could legitimately give him a shot pretty soon because this is how I think the heavyweight division is going to go. Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane is probably going to be next. I'm assuming Aspinall is just going to submit Gane relatively easily. Then after that, there's really nobody. I mean, Volkov already lost to Tom Aspinall. Sergey Pavlovich already lost to Tom Aspinall. Curtis Blades already lost to Tom Aspinall. Jailton Almeida did not fight Tom. Maybe he could be a contender or a guy that goes up against Tom, but he's going to need probably at least one more win. Waldo did not fight Tom, but he's fighting Sergey. I fully expect Waldo to lose to Sergey. Machin Torbur already lost. Sergey, he's not going to get a title shot either. And then you get to Derek Lewis. So most of the guys ahead of Derek Lewis, either already lost to Tom Aspinall or are not going to be competitive, or in the case of Jailton Almeida, I think Jailton Almeida could maybe be a guy that gets a title shot in the near future. But outside of Gane and outside of Jailton Almeida, I really don't think there's much, stopping Derrick Lewis from getting a title shot if he wins, obviously. If he loses, then, you know, everything's out the window. But what he's doing if Gane Aspinall, if Gane Aspinall, I would be very surprised. I'll say that. Listen, Gane is good. I don't want to say Gane's not good. He's really good on the feet. He has great kicks. He's very fast, pretty technical as well. The problem with Gane, though, is I just don't think he hits that hard. I mean, listen, he was able to finish. What's his face? He was able to finish Tai Tuivasa, who has a great chin, but that was over a course of a lot of damage throughout the fight, like a lot of damage. He was able to land a lot of shots. But against Tom Aspinall, I don't think it's going to be like a 5-round beating and eventually he gets a finish in the end. And I also don't think the first shot that he lands is going to knock out Tom Aspinall. I think Tom's chin is proven to be pretty good, and I also don't think Ciryl Gane hits that hard. So listen. I know maybe I'm underrating Ciryl Gane a little bit, but if the fight were to stay on the feet, yes, Gane could certainly have an advantage in this fight. I mean, he is really fast. He is very technical. He doesn't really get hit that much, honestly, either. So that's something to think about. But I think for Aspinall, there's such a clear path to victory for him. Just go literally do what John Jones did. Take him down immediately and submit him. I think Tom certainly has the ability to do that. Gane obviously has, it's been a decent amount of time since he fought John Jones, and maybe he worked on his grappling. I'm sure he did. But, between that time that he fought John Jones and now, and to see where Tom Aspinall is at in terms of his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu, I don't think there's been enough time for Ciryl Gane to make legitimate, improvements in that time. And I still think Tom Aspinall would have a huge advantage on the ground. What do you think of these Pacific Islanders being the worst heavy fighters? I talked about it, dude. Tafa Junior Tafa, I think is a legitimately terrible fighter. For Tai Tuivasa and for Justin Tafa, I don't think either one of them are good. I mean, I think Tai Tuivasa is actually the better between him and Justin, which is saying something. But at least with those two guys, they hit really hard and they have a great chin. With Junior Tafa, he has no qualities at all. I mean, it doesn't seem like he has a great chin. He has no wrestling at all. I mean, he hurt Tuco in the fight and he got taken down immediately when Tuco was hurt. I mean, it kind of just shows you the lack of wrestling that he has. We also saw Junior Tafa not have an ability to stop leg kicks when he has a kickboxing background. I think for Junior Tafa, he literally has nothing. I mean, I hate to bag on the guy so much, but I really don't think he's good at all. And for, Tai Tuivasa and Justin Tafa, they're not good either, but at least for Tai Tuivasa, he's powerful, he has a good chin, and he has good leg kicks. And for Junior Tafa, he's powerful and he has a good chin. But for Junior, there's no redeeming qualities. But yeah, I agree. These guys have not been on a great run, to say the least. Zenny, what's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. Hey, bro, I'm 20 years old and I've trained for 2.5 years, but now I'm injured with 2 herniated discs. Can I get back into MMA? 2 herniated discs. Yeah, I mean, I'm not too familiar with this, obviously. Not a doctor or anything, but herniated discs are pretty serious. So I certainly would, whatever your doctor says, however long you should stay out, I would definitely, take some rest. You don't want to push a herniated disc. You want to make sure it heals properly and heals completely before you get back into things. But that would be my advice, I guess. Losing to Tuco times, so it was crazy. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Junior fight one more time in the UFC. I think probably he should be cut at this point. I mean, he really doesn't have anything. I mean, I believe he won once in the UFC against somebody who also didn't belong in the UFC. But outside of that, he's just losing every fight. And he's also losing in very not great ways. Losing to Tuco, whatever, by sub. I mean, it's not a great look. As I said even before, getting taken down immediately after you rock your opponent is not great either. And yeah, I don't know. Not many redeeming qualities for him. And for Tai Tuivasa, as I said, I think he's probably the best out of the Pacific Islander fighters. But even for him, like I don't know, is he ever going to come back? He's on a losing streak as well. I know, he was like significantly overweight for heavyweight, which is saying something. So who knows where he's going to be at? I do think he can beat some guys, guys that don't have wrestling at least. I do think he can beat some guys, but if he's too overweight, I mean, it doesn't matter. He's not going to fight anymore, or until he, loses some weight. So we'll see what happens for Tai Tuivasa. But for Junior Tafa, I really don't think he's good at all. IDK, what bro was thinking about going to I mean, yeah, it's a great point. That's a great point. I think probably what he was thinking though was he thought he was probably good, but he thought he was losing because he was overweight or something like that. Maybe he thought he was too slow or whatever. So in his mind, he quit. I believe he quit drinking and made some better life choices. Obviously, he did lose a lot of weight, and maybe he thought based on that alone, he'll be able to have more success. But listen, whatever weight class he's at, he's not skilled. So, as you said, I mean, he's not going to be successful moving down. Um, probably his best chance is the heavyweight division, but even for there, he probably is a little bit undersized for heavyweight, and also he doesn't have too many skills. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where Junior Tafa is at this point. But yeah, I mean, good card overall though. A lot of finishes. Let's see how many finishes we have in this card. We had first fight of the night, women's fight was a finish, which is pretty crazy. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had 8 finishes on the card. Really fun card. A lot of finishes. Yeah, it was a good one. These are kind of the cards that I don't mind. I mean, listen, there was not, as I said, there was no like fights on this card that had too much meaning. Maybe the Derrick Lewis fight will turn out to have some meaning based on the way he was able to win. But outside of that, there weren't too many fights that had much meaning, but they were kind of just fights that you thought could be finishes and could be fun fights. And fortunately for us, it did turn out that way. So good card. I think these sort of cards are fine for fight nights. I don't think they should put, fights like this together for pay-per-views. But for fight nights, it's fine. Put it in an arena, have fights like this that are fun, a lot of finishes, and it's a successful night for the UFC. That's kind of how I see. Couldn't learn my favorite. That's the toughest strength. I don't know. That's a great question. Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, it's interesting. It was funny. Lauren Murphy retired. She actually almost got a submission at the end of that third round, but good for her, I guess. But it's kind of whatever. We're top 5 chop moves and fighters all the time. I think Lauren Murphy is up there for sure. I don't know. Let's see. Chop fight. I mean, most of them are pretty chopped, if we're being honest. There's just like a handful that are decent looking. Let's go through the rankings. Let's see if we can find anybody here. Well, Kayla Harrison's pretty chopped. I think Pena's pretty chopped. Pennington's pretty chopped. Bueno Silva's pretty chopped. Chris Cyborg is very chopped. the whole women's like all of women's MMA is pretty chopped. Outside of like 3 fighters maybe. Amanda Nunes, she's a man. Yeah. Kayla Harrison's a man. She has man arms. Who else? For all intents and purposes, Whaley's a man. But she doesn't look as manly as maybe some other people. But for all intents and purposes, she's a man. Who else? Who else? Rose kind of looks like a little boy. But she's good. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. JJ Aldridge. That's a good pull. That's a good pull. JJ Aldridge. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's harder to find women's MMA fighters that are not chopped as opposed to women's MMA fighters that are chopped. Um, but yeah, that was the card though overall. Next week we have Rose's cute with long hair, man. I keep a peg. You're right, actually. I was actually going to mention that. She actually was. Um, this might be weird to say, and I don't know if it's YouTube appropriate, but I think Matt Barrett just likes little boys. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Like he made her look like a little boy. But anyways, moving on. So for next week we have UFC 318. This card's like, it's just like an card. Obviously, the main event is Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. Um, he might be. He might be. Um, wouldn't be surprised. But anyways, yeah. So Max Holloway versus Poirier, the main event. It's a really good main event. But I would prefer it to be for a fight night or something like that. For a pay per view, you would really like to see a title fight for the main event. I know this is technically a BMF title fight, but still, you would like to see an actual title fight. But either way, the fight itself is going to be good. Max Holloway versus Poirier. The co-main event, Paulo Costa versus Kopylov. Also, I think that's a fun fight, but both of these guys are like number 14 and 13th ranked guys respectively in the middleweight division. So to have a co-main event with guys that are so low in the rankings, I think is a little ridiculous. But then we have Kevin Holland and D-Rod. I think Holland's going to win. I think Holland has a chance, honestly, at 170 to be a legitimate contender. Maybe that sounds crazy, but at 170, he doesn't deal with a lot of the same issues he deals with at 185. At 185, he just can't stop wrestlers. He gets taken down, and usually he just gets controlled for 3 rounds, or sometimes he gets finished via submission on the ground as well. But at 170, he is able to stop takedowns. His length is pretty effective at 170. His chin's obviously great for 170, and he hits really hard. So I definitely think Kevin Holland's going to beat D-Rod, and I think he could put some wins together. This will be a 4-fight win streak, I believe, if he beats D-Rod, and maybe he can move throughout the rankings, and have some success at the welterweight division. I really do think he could. Then we have Dan Ige versus Patricio Pitbull. This is probably going to be a weird fight, honestly, if I had to say. For Dan Ige, I mean, he's a good fighter. He has a good amount of power, and he does good things out there. But for Patricio Pitbull, he's obviously a lot older at this point. His UFC debut wasn't a great one, but he still is a good fighter. He kind of just like waits a little bit too much, though, until he finds openings. And when he does find openings, he's very explosive. He can find finishes. But as we saw in the Yair Rodriguez fight, he just waits too much sometimes, and especially in 3-round fights, it doesn't really favor him. But against a guy in Dan Ige, there probably will be a couple of opportunities. This is a much better stylistic matchup for Pitbull than Yair was. So maybe Pitbull can find some openings and land some shots on Dan Ige, but we'll see what happens. Locked in Holland can beat anyone at welterweight. I actually agree. Over these last 3 fights, 2 fights, whatever it's been, where Holland just looks a lot more locked in. He's like I know it might sound ridiculous just because he fights so often and a lot of times he just loses fights or whatever. But I legitimately believe that when Holland's locked in and when he's fighting at welterweight, he's like actually a legitimately good contender. I think he'll finish D-Rod, relatively easily, first or second round KO is my prediction. Or maybe he drops D-Rod and submits him. I could see that as well. But I think a finish in the first or second round for Kevin Holland is likely, adding to his win streak and hopefully moving throughout the rankings. Like I actually think he could be good, as silly as it may sound to some. But after the Pitbull fight, we have Michael Johnson and Daniel Zellhuber. Zellhuber's coming off a really fun performance. He did lose, but a really fun performance in his last one in Noche. That was a while ago at this point. But he's had a lot of time off, maybe some time to improve. And in this fight against Michael Johnson, I think Zellhuber's going to win. For Johnson, I mean, he's got knocked out a bunch of times throughout his career. And at this point, it is what it is. But we kind of know who he is. He has really fast hands. He can land shots on anybody. And if he's able to land, I mean, he probably could knock out anybody. But I think Zellhuber is probably going to win this fight. He has the youth. Michael Johnson is pretty hittable, and he does he does take a lot of shots. So we'll see. I think Zellhuber is going to win, but he does have to worry about the hand speed of Michael Johnson. Holland versus Colby next after D-Rod. I like that fight a lot. It's unfortunate. I mean, at this point, it's probably not that popular to say, but I was a pretty big fan of Colby. I thought he was pretty funny. And when Colby was like actually good, when he's fighting Kamaru Usman, like he was legitimately very good. But at this point, I think after his last fight, it's pretty clear that he's washed. I think Kevin Holland would easily beat Colby at this point. Colby's pretty washed. I thought so going like immediately after that fight against Buckley, but especially after Kamaru Usman fought Buckley and we saw how easily he was able to get takedowns. I think it's even like more of an indication of how washed Colby truly is. It was very difficult for Colby to get a takedown in that fight. And yes, he doesn't take down guys the same way that Kamaru Usman does. It's kind of a different style, the way they do it. At the end of the day, when Colby was in his prime, I'm sure he would beat that version of Hakeem Buckley. But Colby, he got stuffed pretty badly on a lot of the takedown attempts he went for in the Buckley fight. He was kind of getting pieced up on the feet, and it just wasn't a great look for him. So if Colby did go up against Holland in his next fight, I don't think he'll win. I think he'll probably even get finished, honestly. Holland just hits a little bit too hard, and the length is going to be a problem for Colby as well. So maybe they put the fight together. I don't know if Colby's going to accept it, though, at this point. As I said, I just think Colby should retire. I don't really think there's any fight that's a good fight for Colby. I think he's just washed at this point, but we'll see what happens for him. Ryan, what's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. What's your most confident pick for next week's card? Let's see. Most confident pick. Most confident pick is Kevin Holland versus D-Rod. The odds are not going to be good for that. I'm sure Kevin Holland's a big favorite. Maybe you can take him by finish or something like that. But most confident pick is Kevin Holland versus D-Rod. I'm very confident that he'll win. Other picks that I like Max Holloway beating Dustin Poirier. I know Max lost to him already a couple times, but I think at this point, Max is looking to be a little bit better. Yes, he did just get knocked out in his last fight, but before the knockout, I thought Max looked really good in that fight versus Ilia Topuria. Also he looked really good against Justin Gaethje. Also, he's in much better shape this time fighting Dustin than he was last time. I think he's going to hit a lot harder this time than he did last time. I think the volume is still going to be there. That spinning back hit could be a weapon for Max. So I like Max to beat Dustin in this fight. So I like that pick. As I said, most confident pick is Kevin Holland. I also like Vinicius Oliveira to beat Kyler Phillips. That's a pretty confident pick as well. Outside of that, I think Anteba, I can't say this guy's name, but this Anteba guy versus Robert Valentine. I think Anteba is going to win. And that's a confident pick, but I know he's a huge favorite as well. And yeah, in terms of the confident picks, that's really it. But yeah, most confident pick is Kevin Holland. But yeah, let's continue throughout this card. So then going on to the prelims of a fight that I was just talking about, Vinicius Oliveira versus Kyler Phillips. I'm pretty confident that Vinicius is going to win this fight. For Vinicius, I mean, he does have good skill on the feet. He's a good striker. He has good leg kicks. He has a good ability to, land those hooks inside. He also has an ability to land crazy shots like that switch knee that he was able to land against Sopai earlier on in his UFC career. He does really good things, Vinicius Oliveira. And I think the real reason why I'm super high on this guy is he is very physical. He can take shots very well. He hits really hard, as we've seen. And his cardio is good. He kind of does a good job at just pushing through things, honestly. And I think in a fight versus Kyler Phillips, I think that's going to be very important and very meaningful. Because for Kyler Phillips, he is pretty explosive and he does do a good job early, but he also has cardio issues. So in the first round, maybe Kyler Phillips can do some good work, maybe win the round. But starting in round 2 and definitely in round 3, I think that's really where Vinicius is going to take advantage. I think he's going to push a pace. He's going to tire out Kyler Phillips. And I think Vinicius will win in the end. Kopylov for sure beats Costa, right? Probably. I don't want to say for sure, but most likely. I think the old version of Costa probably beats Kopylov, but this version of Costa that we've seen recently, I think probably loses to Kopylov. He just, not aggressive enough, and at range, he's just not good enough at fighting at range, to be honest. And then also specifically in this fight versus Kopylov, if this fight is at range, he's just going to blast, a bunch of body kicks, a bunch of head kicks, a bunch of leg kicks as well. And most likely Kopylov wins this fight, I'll say. I don't want to say for sure, but I'll say most likely he wins. For Costa, I mean, he has like the ability to do some things, but at this point, he's just not aggressive enough. And also at this point, you know, he just doesn't fight that much. So it always feels like he has ring rust going into all of his fights, but he fights once a year, once every 2 years. And you're probably going to have ring rust when you're waiting that long in between fights. So, yes, most likely Kopylov wins that fight. But moving on next, we have Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. I think Brendan Allen's going to win this fight. Marvin Vettori, he's okay at everything. He has okay boxing. He has okay wrestling. He has a great chin. That's one great aspect of his game. But most of his game is like okay, but he is well rounded at the same time. But for Brendan Allen, I think he's just a little bit better, and I think Brendan Allen's going to get the victory in the end via decision, most likely. Brennan does deal with cardio issues, but I don't think that Marvin Vettori is going to be that kind of guy that pushes the pace or potentially hurts Brendan Allen or out wrestles Brendan Allen or something like that. So I think Brendan Allen's going to get the win in the end, probably via decision. Next, we have Prado versus this is a replacement. Okay. Let's see. Okay, yes. All right. He's going up against a guy that fought once in the UFC before. He lost to Vanderford. I remember that fight. He lost by a second round TKO. Most likely Prado's going to win this fight. Yeah, moving on. Next we have Anteba again versus Valentine. Anteba's probably going to win. I actually think he's pretty good. He's relatively technical, but he also hits ridiculously hard. He's very athletic, obviously. He's very fast as well. So I think there's actually a bright future for him at the middleweight division. And I definitely think he'll win this fight. But I think the fight itself is going to be fun. Valentine usually, pushes a pace and usually puts on fun performances. He doesn't always win, obviously, but he puts on fun performances. So I think it's probably going to be a fun fight at the very least. Next, we have Prochnow versus Jimmy Crute. I think both of these guys are really not good, honestly. From a betting perspective, I think I'd probably go Prochnow if I do take it at all. I mean, he does have the leg kicks. Maybe if you can keep the fight at range, he can have success. And for Jimmy Crute, I don't think he's that good, honestly. I mean, he's okay on the stand-up, I guess. He has all right wrestling. His chin is like, it's not that great. So this is kind of like a whatever fight, in my opinion. Next, we have Ryan Spann versus Bretsky. Honestly, I think Bretsky has a real chance to win this fight. I don't think Bretsky's good, but when you watch some of Ryan Spann's more recent fights, especially at heavyweight, he really didn't look good at all. He's kind of, looking away from punches. He doesn't really know what to do sometimes at this point, it feels like. And I just feel like for Ryan Spann, he's taken a lot of damage at this point in his career. Early on in his career, I thought he had a real chance to do something. But at this point, yes, he does hit hard, but outside of hitting hard, he doesn't really have much else. He's not very technical. He's definitely not defensively sound. His chin's not really that good at this point. And I don't know. Probably retirement soon for him. At least that's what I would say in my opinion. Joshua, what's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. But yeah, so we'll see what happens in that fight. But I don't be surprised if Bretsky wins that fight. As I said, I don't think he's good, but I also don't think Ryan Spann's good either. Wonderboy was robbed. Yeah, I agree, by the way. Wonderboy was robbed and Derrrick Lewis is timeless. Yeah. Wonderboy was definitely robbed. The second round, obviously, Wonderboy won that round. And then the third round, it was a lot of control time for Bonfim, yes, but Wonderboy did the more damage. And I feel like we talk about this all the time. MMA YouTubers or just fans in general. We talk about this all the time, but damage trumps all. The damage is the main aspect of the judging criteria. Yes, if you have, control time, if you're able to get takedowns, it means something if nothing else in the round happens. But there was, some damage landed, or more damage at least landed from Wonderboy in that third round as compared to what Bonfim was able to do. So Wonderboy definitely won that fight. It was a split decision. It went to Bonfim, but Wonderboy definitely won that fight. And one thing that I also want to add on to that fight is it was pretty crazy because someone pointed this out, and they're pretty right. It's pretty true that when Wonderboy threw that kick and it was checked, it was pretty close to being a like an Anderson Silva or a Chris Weidman sort of situation where his leg just exploded. It was pretty close to that. That was a pretty bad cut. It was pretty bad, but it was crazy that Wonderboy just was continued to throw that kick a bunch of times. He was even able to hurt Bonfim after his leg got cut open. So pretty good performance for Wonderboy. Did a great job at stopping takedowns as well for the most part and getting off the fence as well. We talk about that a lot. Wonderboy was able to do that, and I thought he won. I thought he won the fight, but whatever. And Derrick Lewis, yeah, it is pretty crazy. I was getting a lot of hate for my Talson Teixeira pick. Obviously, that didn't turn out to be true. Derrick Lewis is just a beast, and I even said going into it, Derrick Lewis is not obviously the most technical guy in the world, but he hits really hard. If he's able to land on you, he can knock out a horse, and he was able to land a beautiful left hook. Landed, he dropped Talson, and he was able to find the finish from there. I thought it was probably an early stoppage, but good finish regardless. What's up? What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. Yeah. That's what I said. That was an early stoppage with Lewis. I agree. Maybe Derrick Lewis would have won anyway. I don't want to say, he was going to lose or whatever. Honestly, he probably would have won anyway, but I thought it was an early stoppage. Yes, I know people point out that Talison was grabbing onto the cage to get back up, which is true. It's cheating, but probably what I would have said was, let the fight play out a little bit, and if Derrick Lewis found the finish from there, obviously you stop the fight. But but if they got to a point where they were in the clinch or they were at space or whatever, and it was kind of a dead time, at that point you stop the fight, and you take a point away from Talson Teixeira, and then you continue on with the fight. That's what I personally would have done. But yeah, I think what Herzog thought in that fight was obviously Talison was rocked. Obviously, he cheated utilizing the cage to get back up to his feet. And because of that, Herzog was like, I'm just going to call the fight. So I think that's probably what that's probably a thought. It was a little bit of an early stoppage, but Talison literally grabbed two hands, grabbed the fence. Wouldn't have been able to get up if not for that. Yeah, that's fair. It is fair. I think that's why he did stop the fight. But in my opinion, as I said, probably what I would have done if I was in that situation was I would have waited, and if they got into the clinch or if they got into in space and there wasn't too much action going on, I would have stopped the fight for a second at that point, taken a point away from Talson Teixeira, and then continue the fight from there. That's what I would have done. Obviously, Talson did cheat. I'm not denying that or anything. But I thought it wasn't a great stoppage just because immediately after stopping the fight, Talison was complaining about it immediately. So he kind of showed that he has his wits about him, but still a great win for Derrick Lewis. And I kind of talked about this before, and I do think it's true. Derrick Lewis is probably one win away from a title shot. As crazy as that sounds, that kind of also just shows the lack of talent and the lack of contenders we have at the heavyweight division. But at this point, Tom Aspinall has beaten essentially everybody. He's probably going to fight Ciryl Gane next. I think he'll beat Ciryl Gane. And then after that, I don't know. There's really no clear contenders. There's really not, because either Tom has beaten everybody else, or they're just not that good, or the other contenders are just not that good. As I said, the only guy that maybe can compete for a belt after Ciryl Gane is Jailton Almeida. But even for him, I think Tom Aspinall would beat him. But maybe that's another potential contender. But outside of Jailton Almeida and Ciryl Gane, there's really nobody else that would be ahead of Derrick Lewis, honestly. And maybe Derrick Lewis can even leap Jailton Almeida. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens for there. Lewis got wobbled. He said after the fight that he was playing possum. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But that's what he was saying when he was wiping his eye or whatever. You said he was playing possum. And if Herzog would have stopped to take a point, he possibly robbed Derek Lewis of stoppage. It's a sticky situation. I agree. But I guess what I'm trying to say, you're right. If he stopped it, like that point where he stopped the fight, if he stopped it then and said, "I'm taking a point," um, I think probably he would have robbed Derek Lewis of a potential finish. But what I'm saying is, at that point, if Derek Lewis and Towson were just in the clinch and nothing was going on, they were just holding on to each other. At that point, I thought it probably would have been a good point to stop it and take a point off. Yes, I guess you are technically giving some more time to Towson to recover, so I guess you would have a point with that. But but my point is, like, if nothing was going on, if Derek Lewis wasn't, punching to find a finish or whatever, as I said, if nothing was going on, I think it's not the worst idea of taking a point off, or maybe you just let it go and take the point off at the end of the round if they got there. Maybe you could have done that as well. Um, but I mean, usually you don't see those things. Usually see points get deducted immediately, but I don't know if I don't think there's a rule against that. If you see a foul and there's a potential finish, let the fight play out. And if Towson is able to survive at the end of the round, then you take a point. Maybe you could have done that, but I don't know if that's allowed or not. So yeah, but it is a sticky situation. I thought it was probably a bad stoppage, probably early, but at the same time, it is a sticky situation. Do you think Vittori is washed? He's probably washed, but I also thought like he was never that good from the beginning. As I said, for Vittori, I kind of think that he's like good at everything, but he's not great at anything. He's a good wrestler. He has good striking. Um, but he's not great. He's not a great striker. He's not a great grappler. So he was kind of like middle of the pack. I thought good enough to be like a top 8 contender probably. But I don't think he was good enough to be a champion or anything like that. And at this point, he's probably even a little bit worse than he was at his peak. So maybe he's a little bit washed. But yeah, I don't know. I just never thought he was that great to begin with. But maybe he's washed from that point. Let's just all agree that the reffing is a hardest job. Making stop judgment. Yeah, I agree. It is a really hard job because in 1 second, it could look like that Towson's out or he's not with it. You stop the fight, and all of a sudden he was fine. I'm not saying that was the case, but I'm just saying theoretically. You see stuff like that all the time. The Ben Askren thing back in the day. By the way, Ben Askren seems to be getting better, which is great. I was really happy to see that. But the Ben Askren thing, when he fought Robbie Lawler and he had that bulldog choke, it looked like Robbie Lawler was out. Like it legitimately did look like it. But as soon as Herb Dean stopped the fight, it became obvious it was a bad stoppage because what's his face was completely there. So reffing obviously is a really hard job. You have to make a split-second decision. If you let it go on too long, you could have a Bobby Green situation. I thought that was way too late, but still, you theoretically could, have a fight go on too long and have, a fighter take unnecessary damage. But if you stop the fight too early, you could have a situation where people are complaining about a bad stoppage. So it is a tough job. It is a tough job. I feel like Brendan Allen's a lock against him. I probably would agree. Yeah. I actually, so I know a lot of people don't agree, but I actually think Brendan Allen's a pretty good fighter. He has good striking. He has really good grappling, really good jiu-jitsu. The thing that Brendan Allen struggles with is guys that push a pace on him. Brendan Allen usually struggles with cardio. We've seen it a lot in honestly most of his fights, especially 5-rounders. But in this fight against Marvin Vettori, it's a 3-round fight for one. And for two, as I said, Marvin's not really going to be a guy that pushes the pace. So I think Brendan Allen can kind of fight a slow pace fight, conserve some of his gas tank, and I think he'll probably just win the fight. On the feet, I think he's better than Marvin Vettori, and on the ground, Marvin may be a better wrestler. He probably is a better wrestler, but if Brendan Allen's able to get his back, who knows? Brendan Allen is very good on when he's able to get someone's back. Maybe he can even find a submission. So I do think Brendan Allen's probably going to win this fight. But we'll see what happens. For Brendan, I mean, I believe he's on a 2-fight losing streak at this point, but the guys he lost to are some of the best of the division. Let's see. He is on 2-fight losing streak. So he lost to Fluffy Hernandez, who I think is a horrible stylistic matchup for him. Just because Fluffy does a great job at pushing the pace, and just tiring guys out. He kind of like Marab's guys, where he just pushes a really high pace and tires his opponents out, and he's able to find, decision victories or sometimes even finishes at the end of, a 5-round fight potentially. But in his fight against Brendan Allen, he was able to, fight at a really high pace, fight at a pace that would tire out Brendan Allen, which we saw in that fight. Um, Brendan was kind of obliging to that high pace, and he even actually had some success in that fight. But he was able that, but he lost in the end because he kind of gassed out a little bit. In the fight before that, he fought Imavov, kind of a similar thing. Brendan Allen gassed out again. Um, in that fight, it was kind of a high paced fight as well. But Imavov is actually a really good fighter. Um, so yeah, so he lost to a couple guys, but Imavov is a guy who I said I think he's one of the better guys in the division. And for Fluffy, I don't think Fluffy's amazing, but I think in terms of a stylistic matchup, is it's one of the tougher fights for Brendan Allen based on his lack of cardio. But yeah, Marvin Vittori is a pretty big step down and a good stylistic matchup, I think, for Brendan Allen. So I think he'll probably win. Um, but yeah, so the rest of this card is whatever. So for UFC 318, I kind of feel a similar way going into it, how I felt about this last week's card, the Derrick Lewis card. Just because there's a lot of fights in this card that I think are going to be fun. Like the main event, Max Holloway versus Poirier is going to be fun. Casa versus Kopylov, most likely going to be fun. Holland versus D-Rod's going to be fun. Johnson versus Sally Hooper's most likely going to be fun. Phillips versus Oliveira. There's a bunch of other fights as well that are probably going to be fun. It's just the problem with it is there's not like a number one contender fight on this card. There's not even a title fight on this card. So you're kind of missing some fights that you would like to see on a pay-per-view. But in terms of the fights themselves, like I guess what I'm trying to say is on paper going into it, it's not a card that you're going to be super excited about. You're not going to say, oh my God, Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov is a co-main event. This is such an exciting fight. Obviously, people aren't really going to be thinking that, but when it actually gets to Saturday and when we're actually watching the fights, I think the fights themselves are going to be pretty fun. I've been talking about this a little bit. I thought cards like this are fine when they're being put together as fight nights, but when you're talking about pay-per-views, you really want to see those number one contender fights. You really want to see a title fight at the very least, at least one title fight, usually two title fights for a pay-per-view. And unfortunately for this card, we're just not really seeing that. I can't believe Costa versus Kopylov is the co-main. I agree. This is like Costa or Paul like really doesn't fight at all, and Kopylov is. I mean, he's kind of like a contender that's making his way up, but I don't know. Co-main is pretty ridiculous. I mean, I think they're ranked 13 and 14 respectively. That's your co-main event. It is pretty crazy. Co-main it should be either a title fight, like maybe 125-pound title fight, or a number one contenders fight, or some huge fight, huge names or something like that. That's what a co-main event should be for a pay-per-view. But to have Casa versus Kopylov, I think is a little ridiculous. Casa should have been caught for all those fight cancellations, man. Yeah. I wouldn't be too confident that he's going to fight this weekend either. I mean, at this point, probably he will. I mean, we are pretty close to the card. But yeah, he pulls out way too much, and on top of that, he just doesn't fight that much either. So he only fights once a year, and even in those fights that he does fight, that he's scheduled to fight, he pulls out a lot of time as well. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe Paulo just isn't that focused on fighting at this point, or whatever the thing is, or maybe Adesanya just took away his confidence. I don't exactly know, because at one point I was a pretty big fan of Paulo Costa. He was putting on really exciting fights, and he was a legitimate contender. I mean, he fought for the belt, but at this point, it's just appears to be a different guy, and we'll see what happens in this fight. I still think there's a chance he could be Kopylov, but most likely Kopylov is going to win. Most likely Polo is going to, fight at range, not be aggressive, and kind of play into the style of Roman Kopylov. But we'll see what happens in that one. But yeah, so The card is just like whatever, in my opinion. It is ironic because the next card after that, the next week after that, the UFC Abu Dhabi card, I think that's more of a pay-per-view worthy card than UFC 318. That card is something that I'm actually looking forward to. You have Derrrick versus Whitaker as the main event. That's actually a really good fight. For RDR, the question is, can he continue with his plot armor? Could he beat Whitaker? And if he beats Whitaker, maybe he gets a title shot. Maybe he needs one more fight, but he'll be pretty close at the very least. And imagine if we get a DDP versus RDR fight. That would be like the craziest thing ever. Plot armor versus plot armor. And I guess we'll see who would win that fight. But and then for Whitaker, the question is, can he, continue to stop takedowns from a really good wrestler in RDR, and can he, find the victory? So that's a really good fight. I kind of lean towards RDR, honestly, but that's a really good fight. Then the co-main is what I was talking about before, a legitimate number one contender fight. Movsar Evloev versus Aaron Pico. Whoever wins that's going to get the title shot versus Volkanovski. I talked about this a lot, but I thought initially Yair was going to get it, which I thought was ridiculous. But it seemed like Yair Rodriguez was going to get the title shot versus Volkanovski. But I think actually, ironically enough, the fact that Dana White is promoting Canelo versus Crawford is a reason for why Yair Rodriguez is not getting the title shot versus Volkanovski. Because initially they were going to put that card, Noche, in Guadalajara, and it was going to be a pay-per-view. And I think the main event would have been Yair versus Volkanovski. But because they're doing Canelo Crawford, they don't want to have those cards, be at the same time. They are on the same day, but I think UFC Noche is probably going to be early in the day now because of Canelo Crawford. But for a pay-per-view, obviously they can't make it early in the day. So I think that's a reason why we're not seeing that fight. And but it turned out to be a good thing though, because if Evloev deserves a title shot at this point, he's in a number one contenders fight versus Pico. Whoever wins that fight will get the title shot, and we go from there. Then next after that, we have Peter Yan and Marcus McGee. Weird fight. I mean, Marcus McGee is like the 13th ranked guy, which is odd that he's fighting Peter Yan. But I think probably what happened is Peter Yan wants to fight at least one more time. He's probably going to get the next title shot, but he probably wanted to fight at least one more time and fight the winner of Merab versus Corey Sandhagen, which is most likely going to be Merab. But I guess the only guy that was available was Marcus McGee. So that's the fight we have. And for Marcus McGee, it's a huge opportunity for him if he's somehow able to pull off a victory, but I highly doubt it. I think Peter Yan's going to put on a masterclass type performance. Then we have Bryce Mitchell versus Said Nurmagomedov. Bryce is moving down to bantamweight. I think that's probably a better weight class for him. I thought he just wasn't powerful enough for 145, so moving down to 135 is probably a good thing for him. Nurmagomedov is a very explosive kind of guy, but I think Bryce is going to win that fight. I think he'll be able to, get a hold of Nurmagomedov, maybe find some takedowns, tire him out, and I think he'll be able to win. And then we have Shara versus Marc-Andre Barriault. This is kind of like a whatever fight. I don't really think Shara is very good. I made a bunch of videos saying how I thought he was going to get fraud checked. I guess he kind of did versus MVP, but I really don't think he's very good. He has good kicks, but his boxing's not good. His wrestling is non-existent, and his defense is not good either. So Marc-Andre Barriault has a chance to push Shara along to the cage, land some big bombs. That's probably how he would win, but probably a win for Shara, but still not high on him. Then we have Nikita Krylov versus Guskov. I always thought Krylov was a good fighter, but it seems like his IQ is not great. I mean, in his last fight, he kind of ran into a counterpuncher, which I thought was odd. But Krylov could win that fight, but we'll see where his IQ is on that night. Then we have this is a new fight edition. We have Muslim Sadikov versus Carlos Leal. This is actually going to be a great fight. I'm actually like a pretty big fan of Sadikov, Salikov, because all he does is throw spinning wheel kicks, but he lands them at such a high clip, and he's also like 40 whatever. He's pretty old, but he lands them at such a high clip and has success. It's like almost hilarious. But his spinning wheel kick is ridiculously fast, so he's able to land them a lot. And Carlos Leal is just a human steroid basically. He hits pretty hard. He's obviously pretty big, so it's probably going to be a really fun fight, honestly. You have Ebo Islam, and I don't think he's very good, but he hits hard. Probably be a fun fight. Then we have Almabayev. He's good for flyweight. We'll see where he can go. Martin Budai versus the newcomer to heavyweight. We'll see how he does. Yaya, that's whatever. Damon Blackshear versus Davy Grant. That's a good fight. Blackshear is actually good, I think. Good jiu-jitsu, good striking, and he'll probably beat Davy Grant. But that's the card though. But that's a legitimate good card. This is more pay-per-view worthy in my opinion than UFC 318 is. RDR versus Whitaker as the co-main event for UFC 318 would make a lot of sense as opposed to Paulo Costa versus Kopylov. But whatever. They put the cards together the way they do it, and that's it. So, but unfortunately, after the Whitaker de Ritter card, we have kind of a lull where we have two back-to-back Apex cards, which sucks. But the good news is after that, we have Hamza Chimaev and Dricus du Plessis. So that's going to be an amazing fight. The card itself is whatever. It doesn't look to be that great. Maybe they'll add some fights to this card. I'm sure they will. But the main event is so good that I'm still going to be very excited for this card. But we'll see. I'm hoping for some good fights. I think this upcoming weekend is going to probably be pretty fun at the very least. So yeah, we'll see what happens on that card. But yeah, so the next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to do some matchmaking for after UFC Nashville. So let's go to some of these cards. Well, let's just start with the main event, I guess. So Derrick Lewis, where do we match Derrick Lewis up against? For Derrick Lewis, you guys said it earlier in chat, and I probably would agree, honestly. Derrick Lewis's next fight could be against Waldo. As I said, though, the problem with Waldo is he is fighting Sergey, so there might be a little bit of a wait for Derrick Lewis if you wanted to fight him. But outside of that, maybe you can do Derrick Lewis versus... Could you do Derrick Lewis versus Curtis Blades again? I mean, Derrick Lewis already knocked out Curtis Blades, but can you do the rematch? Maybe. If Derrick Lewis beats Curtis Blades again for the second time, he'll probably get a title shot after that. I mean, Curtis is number 4. If he beats number 4, he'll definitely get a title shot next. So that's probably what I would say. Derrick Lewis versus Curtis Blades. That's what I would say. And for Teixeira, maybe it's not super popular at this point, but I still think he has a real chance to be decent. Maybe I'll do Talson Teixeira versus Mick Parkin. That's probably what I would do for Teixeira. Then next, let's see, who else do we have in this card? Wonderboy. So Wonderboy, does Wonderboy retire? That's a question. I don't know. But well, probably not. I assume Wonderboy's going to continue because he actually looks pretty good still. So for Wonderboy, his next fight could be up against. The thing with Wonderboy is you want to match him up against a striker, but at the same time, a lot of the strikers are ahead of him, and I don't think he should be fighting ahead of himself in the rankings after losing a couple fights in a row. You could do Wonderboy versus MVP. That fight's always there, but MVP actually is already fighting. He's already fighting Jared Cannonier at a weight class above, and also Wonderboy and MVP has always talked about how they didn't want to fight each other. So I don't know. Wonderboy's probably gonna have to fight an unranked guy, I would say. And for Gabriel Bonfim, he'll probably fight a ranked guy. We'll see how the rankings pan out because, as I said, MVP has a fight booked, Holland has a fight booked, Prates has a fight booked, Jeff Neal has a fight booked against Prates actually. So most of these guys have a fight booked. So for Gabriel Bonfim, probably have to wait. But his next fight is probably going to be a ranked fight against a ranked guy. Then for Calvin Kattar, Steve Garcia, Calvin Kattar, I think should probably retire. He just doesn't have that aggression anymore. He's a little bit too passive at this point, and I think he looks a little bit washed, honestly, at this point. So for Calvin, I would say retire, and for Steve Garcia, definitely a ranked guy. He's probably going to be 14 at this point, or maybe even a little bit higher. Steve Garcia, though, could go up against Yusuf Zalal. Steve Garcia, Yusuf Zalal. That'd be a great, great fight. That's a good one. You could do Steve Garcia versus David Onama. That's also a really fun fight. Very tough challenges, both of these guys, Onama and Zalal. But I kind of think Steve is that level of fighter. So I think he can go up against either one of those guys and maybe beat them. So that's what I'd say for that fight. Nate Landwehr and Charriere. Good win for Charriere. Charriere, maybe I'll say for Charriere, probably one more unranked guy. I would say probably one more unranked guy, and for um, and I would say the same for Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr is good, but there's kind of a limit to what Nate Landwehr can do. He'll push a pace. He has decent boxing. He has even decent wrestling. But there's a limit to what he can do, and I think we saw that in that fight. Stupid Bonfim. Yeah, I agree. Welcome to stream, by the way, Mikey. But I agree. He kind of just, looked to hold on for dear life at the end of the third round. But I thought Wonderboy won that fight, regardless of the holding at the end. But the judges thought differently, obviously. But yeah, it sucks for Wonderboy because I thought he won. But anyways, then for Vitor Petrino and Austin Lane has to retire at this point. I mean, how many times is he going to lose? I was happy to see, though, that he didn't get knocked out because Austin Lane has taken like a ridiculous amount of damage over the years, but still, it's another loss on his resume, another finish loss on his resume, and for Petrino, maybe he can fight a ranked guy at this point. Him moving up to heavyweight, I think, was a good move. He hits really hard. He'll probably be faster than most guys at heavyweight, and he has a good chin, so I think he could have success at heavyweight. I don't think he's very good, but I think he could have some success at heavyweight, and maybe you give him a ranked guy after that win. Sorry. What am I doing? Then next you have Tuco. He'll fight an unranked guy. Junior Tafa, I think he should probably retire. Or well, not retire. I mean, he's pretty young, but I think the UFC should probably cut him at this point. His UFC record is like 1-4. I think the only guy he beat was somebody who wasn't UFC level, and yeah, I don't know. I just don't think he's very good. And this is another submission loss for Tafa. So that's what I think. Chris Curtis, he's just moved down to welterweight. Maybe one more unranked guy at welterweight or someone at the bottom of the rankings for Chris Curtis. I don't think he's going to be that great. He has really good boxing if his opponent's willing to trade with him in the pocket. But outside of that, there's not much to Chris Curtis. He doesn't deal well with movement. He doesn't deal well with with other guys as well. And I don't know. But yeah, probably low end of the rankings or unranked guy for Chris Curtis. For Max Griffin, unranked guy for sure. Jake Matthews, he called out Gilbert Burns next. Maybe he can get that fight, but probably one more unranked fight, I would say. But his win over Cheaty is a good one. I think Cheaty's actually a good fighter. And he was able to submit him like very early in the first round. So good win for Jake Matthews. Lauren already retired. Mora, whatever. Volter Walker, this is a guy who's surprising me. Volter Walker is surprising me. Going into this fight, I thought Kennedy would win just because I didn't think Volter was good. I also didn't think Kennedy was good, but I didn't think Volter would be able to get takedowns. And I thought if the fight was forced to be on the feet, I thought Kennedy is the better striker. I didn't think Volter would have much for him. But Volter Walker is just kind of running through guys with heel hooks. It's honestly crazy to see. I think Volter Walker could legitimately be a good fighter. And for Volter Walker, let's see, is he ranked? I don't think so. No, he's not. So definitely a ranked fight next for Volter Walker. You can do honestly any of these guys. You could do Talson Teixeira versus Walker. You could do McParkin versus Walker. You could do Gazia versus Walker. Taito Ivasa versus Walker. I think he would beat Taito Ivasa. And even in Kuniev versus Walker. I actually think Walker might be good. He's surprising me a lot. Next, you have Mike Davis. Problem with Mike Davis is he never fights. I talk about this all the time, but he never fights. So I don't know, but probably just gonna be an unranked guy again. and Klein probably unranked as well. But yeah, I guess the only fights that really matter is Derrick Lewis. He'll probably fight one more time, and if he wins, he'll get the title shot. If he loses, maybe he'll be close to retirement. I don't know. The thing with Derrick Lewis, I mentioned this a lot, but he's not like very good. Obviously, he's not very skillful, but this is heavyweight, and he has that nuclear option. If he lands a big right hand, even in this fight, as we just saw against Teixeira, even if he lands a big left hook, he'll be able to knock out anybody. He can knock out a horse. So the fact that he has that power is always going to bode well for Derrick Lewis, and you know he honestly could beat anybody. He even could theoretically beat Tom Aspinall. He just needs to land a shot. I don't think he'll beat Tom. I don't think he'll land a shot, but it's possible. It's heavyweight. Anybody could land. And for Derrick Lewis, if he lands, he'll knock you out with one shot. So we'll see what happens for Derrick Lewis. I think probably a rematch between him and Curtis Blades, maybe a good fight. Or yeah, either him against Curtis Blades, or you could do him against Costa. If you want to give Derrick Lewis a title shot, wait for the Costa fight or for the Waldo fight. Waldo versus Sergey Pavlovich. Sergey Pavlovich probably wins. Then you do Waldo versus Derrick Lewis. I think Derrick Lewis wins that fight. I'm pretty confident in that. And if that happens, then maybe you justify giving Derrick Lewis a title shot. Because I also think Derrick Lewis would find a finish in that fight as well. So, yeah. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens for this upcoming weekend. We'll see what happens. Main event of UFC 318. As I said, I do lean Max Holloway in that fight. I think the volume is going to be big. I know he lost to Dustin a couple times already, but I think the way he's moving up to 155 this time is a lot better. I think we saw that in the Gaethje fight. He was able to take some shots. He was also able to hit a lot harder. He hurt Gaethje a bunch of times in that fight, and of course, in the end, he knocked him out cold. And Gaethje is known to have an amazing chin. So against Poirier, who also is known to have a great chin, maybe Max won't be able to finish him, but I wouldn't be surprised if in some of those exchanges, Max is able to hurt Dustin, at least to a certain extent. I think a big problem for Max when they fought for the interim title back in the day was Max was landing and he was having success, but it just seemed like Max was landing a combo, 3, 4, 5, 6 punch combination, and it wasn't having much of an effect on Dustin. But when Dustin was landing on Max, it was really hurting Max. But I think this time around, the fact that Max put on, additional weight, is in better shape at this point. I think some of the shots that he lands on Dustin could actually have an effect. As I said, is he going to finish him? Most likely not. But if some of the shots he lands has an effect on Dustin, I think that's a real game changer in this fight, and that's at least why I'm personally leaning towards Max Holloway winning this fight versus Dustin. But we'll see what happens. It is Dustin's retirement fight. He does have great boxing. This is probably going to be a war back and forth. I think both guys are going to land a lot of shots, and we'll see who gets the victory in the end. But yeah, definitely should be a good one for sure. But yeah, I mean, not much news outside of that. Nothing else really happened. I can do a quick Twitter check. I usually like to do this midstream just to see if any news came out or anything, but I don't think anything came out. Well, actually, there was recently an interview with Max Holloway that came out. He was kind of saying a couple things about Topuria. Don't really agree. Max Holloway says he thinks Ilya's 3-fight win streak is overrated. In my opinion, I don't really think that's true. Just because for Max, or not for Max, for Topuria, I know the thought process behind a lot of people and why they think Ilya's win streak is overrated, because they say for Volkanovski, he was knocked out by Islam before and his chin was already cracked. But I think regardless, Ilya probably would have knocked him out. But that's the thing they say for Volk. For Max, they say, what do they say for Max? That he just fought up a weight class and he moved back down. I don't know what they say for Max, actually. And then for Charles, they say he's out of his prime and he's washed. So that's really the criteria they have. But in my opinion, I don't really agree with that. I think for Volkanovski, he proved it in his Diego Lopez fight. He's still there. I mean, he's still an elite fighter. The problem is his chin's just not great, but I don't think his chin was ever great. So I don't really agree with that sentiment. For Max Holloway, I thought Max is honestly looking at like kind of the best ever. I know he's been fighting for a while at this point. He's taken, a lot of damage over the years, but um, I think Max is looking really good. I think his Gaethje fight right before the Ilya Taporia fight was one of his better performances, honestly. So I think Max looked really good. And then for Charles Oliveira, I mean, yes, he is getting older in his career, but I don't think he looks bad. I thought he looked pretty good in some of his more recent fights. Almost beat Armin Saryukin. I thought he did beat Armin. So yeah, I don't really agree with that sentiment. Also, Max in that same interview said that Taporia doesn't really hit that hard, but or it doesn't hit as hard as Justin Gaethje does, which I don't know. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But I mean, I think it's probably not true because he was able to knock out Charles Oliveira cold with the first shot he landed, and what Gaethje was able to land on Oliveira, he knocked him down twice, but he wasn't able to finish him. So I don't know. I don't really agree with that sentiment, but is what it is. Max was in there with Taporia, and I wasn't, so I guess he would know better. But yeah, so that's really what we have for this live stream. I'm shooting for around an hour and a half. Usually that's what we look to stride to. But yeah, maybe I'll if you guys have any last second questions, be sure to let me know in chat. I'll definitely answer them, and if we get a bunch of questions, um I'll extend the live stream. I'll continue, but if not, I appreciate you guys for being here. Um, this has been great. Obviously, we do stream every single day during the week. We will be streaming tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to tune into that if you guys are interested. We have more videos coming out. I did talk about this a little bit before, but I am going to move to a 3 video per week schedule. At this point, I'm doing 2 videos a week, Wednesday, Friday. I'm going to do 3 videos, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, probably starting after the Dustin Poirier fight, that card. So the following Monday is probably going to be when I start it. Because after that Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier fight, I'm going to post a why I was right or why I was wrong video on that Sunday. And then, yeah, going from there, it'll be a 3 uploads per week sort of schedule. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know in chat. Was a really good card overall for the Derrick Lewis card. Great performance from Derrick Lewis, 35-second TKO victory. Some people thought it was a bad stoppage or whatever, but regardless, it was a good fight. We'll see where Taliesin goes from here. We'll see where Derrick Lewis goes from here. And yeah, I appreciate it. But I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out, boys.